Okay, hello to anyone and everyone who might be watching. So, tonight we are going to be cleaning up some of the animations and getting all of that set up. So let us jump right into it. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on tonight is the male character and replacing some of the old animations that are in there, fixing some of the ones that are already there, and fixing our animator, because we've made some big improvements with working with the female character, and yeah, so we need to kind of, as crazy and spiderwebby as it is, the actual system in place here and how it actually feels and works is much better than what the current male character has on him. So we're going to replicate that over and just kind of tweak some things. So yeah, we're going to head right into Blender and just figure this out. Alright. Alright, so the first thing I'm thinking we might do is fixing the jump animation. So yeah. Actually, you should probably fix the idle first. I haven't actually looked at his idle in a while. Let's get back into Unity and actually check what I need to fix. I guess the idle's fine for now. Yeah, that's not good. Okay, so yeah, he does not have a wall sliding animation. Shoot. So I don't know what to tackle first. Let's get this all fixed. So this is the good one. Yes, this is the good one. Let's duplicate that. that's taken care of. Next. It's going to be one of the first things to get changed, actually. Don't have that yet. Okay, Lucy has the animations. They're a little bricked up right now, but they're there and they're working fine. Change that. Let's fix that now. Okay. Alright, so I don't know which to tackle first. Actually, maybe we should do. probably do his probably do his jumping, wall jumping, wall slide. That would be the most those pose the most problems, of course. Yeah, those definitely are going to be causing this problem. So, wall slide. So, it's not the most. Let's see. The process that I usually go with when doing this is I test it in game, and that kind of gives me an idea of where the wall is in relation to the bounding box. Another thing that helps is just switching the orthographic view. Switching the orthographic view, and I can kind of see exactly how far, flat on, how far. See his hands aren't touching. And that gives me a better sense of how I need to move him. And then I can just kind of put a mark or a guideline. So I'll switch over to Blender now. So once I kind of get established where he needs to be, I can move him and just kind of place the 3D cursor, and that kind of gives me just a general idea of where I think the wall is actually going to end up being. And that just kind of gives me a good base to start on. So we're actually going to completely redo this pose for sliding down walls. So, how do I want this pose to be? It's always the hardest thing is figuring out exactly what I want a pose to look like. I know I want him to be facing the camera, but I do want it to be a little bit more of a ready to jump rather than just hanging on for nothing kind of look. I always find it funny with stuff like this, because not that people haven't, or that it's not possible, I know free runners and stuff, but the kind of video game wall slide before the jump is kind of a unique thing to video games, in a way. And so, even though there is probably reference out there, it's definitely not as readily available as something as videos of people jumping, or flips, or, breathing, walking, running. The moment you kind of tap into a more video game-esque motion, you want it to look believable, but then at the same time, what my character is doing is pretty unbelievable. I mean, the rate at which he falls is significantly slowed, and the fact that he can just jump twice his height from that pose is definitely a feat that I haven't seen anyone in reality actually pull off. Sticking this pose I think that looks much better than what I originally had though, which is what we're going for. We'll save this and see how it looks inside of Unity. Let Unity load up and now obviously, as I stated before, the marker that I put with the 3D cursor to kind of gauge the wall, he is not anywhere near that. So this animation is going to be very far from the wall, but it gives me a nice idea of how it looks in game and what I may or may not want to change. Definitely changes the wall jump from the flip to something a little bit more organic from that pose, but I don't know. Alright, so let's move the pose and actually see if we can make it something we'd like. So yeah, I just hopped in the blender real quick, which you did not see because I did not switch over to it. But I just moved the pose over a little bit more, so yeah, now it's more on the wall. I don't know, I kind of feel like that's more of how a JoJo character would slide down a wall. I guess he does kind of have that build. Okay, so yeah, let's actually try to get a nicer feel from the pose. Because I definitely want the action when on the wall and just the general feel of it to be where you can, you know, you're slowing down because of friction, and I want to actually feel that friction. I want the player to actually kind of get a sense of that. So, just pop in the blender and get to it. One thing that is also nice, you have to set it up in this file, but I usually keep a smaller window. That kind of houses
the character, and I keep it at a profile and kind of adjust everything lens-wise and all that, so that way it kind of replicates what I have in the Unity engine. So, you know, I get a good distance. I get a good distance from it, you know, and just that profile is very useful to kind of just glance up so I can actually get a sense of what it will look like in game. I think I want there to definitely be more of a more like a purged kind of feel. So let's see. Move the feet up a little bit more. Have one out. And unlike what I used to do, so I used to just have my characters be mirrored. So, you know, any asymmetrical traits they had, you know, when I'm using 3D models, anything like that, I just mirrored the model. So animations really only had to look good from one angle. And I still am in a profile view, so, you know, my animations can still have somewhat of a leniency in terms of how they look from other angles. But because my characters are now seen from the back, because I actually rotate them, having that adds a little bit extra, to it, because you can't just have all these wacky. You know, if it looks good from the front, it has to look good from the back, because you're gonna see it just as much. I think already that looks so much better. Okay. So before we save that, let's go back into Unity and just get a look at what's currently in game at the moment. Alright, so let's see how this looks. Alright, so that's what we had. And, let's get this new. Of course, even this is somewhat of a placeholder. All of the characters, playable characters, are going to be having a long-range weapon, some type of gun or something, and then a melee weapon. And animations will definitely have to be tweaked once those are implemented. Okay, so yeah, that looks better, but it's still a little off. One thing that's also helpful is there's sometimes where I feel like I succeeded with one character in some areas and not so much with others. So originally my female character's run cycle was just trash. And so I kind of modeled it off of what I had for the male and just tweaked it. And her wall slide definitely feels better. Definitely feels better. think it just has to do with the foot placement. I think the back foot should be higher, and yeah, that just looks so much better. Okay, so we're gonna jump back into Blender and try to sort that out with him. Alright, sorry about that. Okay, so get that out of here. And so what we want to do is we want to switch the back and right foot. And that front looks decent. I think that's a much better pose. We shall see what Unity thinks. Why is that still the pose? Oh, wait. There we go. I forgot to actually save the blend file properly. That's much better. Still not the greatest thing, but it's better. I'm wondering if you should have both hands up against the wall. Yeah, let's see how that is with both hands up against the wall. Yeah, already that's looking better. So let's actually fix the hands now that we have the face kind of set. And that's the thing, even though you're working on such low poly models that are then made to look like pixel art, I still find that little details like the hand, you know, not being open in the proper way or anything like that. That stuff still reads, and just that little bit of detail can be what makes the difference between animation, or even in this case right now, it's just a static pose, but really make the difference between that looking really good and believable and just like, okay, why is his hand always stuck in one position? And I could have gone the route of having, you know, like one just cube, or like, you know, just that kind of mitten style hand, since my characters are never really seen. So what I did is I put the hand up against the wall, opened up the hand nice and, you know, because even with such little little details like that tend to show up even with the pixelation, and you never really want that to be missed. Alright, so this already, I can tell, is going to look much better in much better. Oh yeah, that's the one. Okay, cool. Alright, so next is maybe adding some kind of like motion to it. I don't know if I'm just gonna leave it static for now and work on the jump, because the wall jump right now, it goes straight into that flip, and that looks cool, but doesn't feel right. Let's see. It's also really fast. I don't know why I put the speed up. Okay, that's why I had it fast, because you don't even see the flip because he jumps so slow. Okay, so yeah, we'll we'll fix all that. Yeah, this is another side effect of the new system that's in place, and why using older animations does not work. So the wall sliding is called, and how it's set up, because it just blends so smoothly into the other animations, so you just run and slide. As you can see with the female character, the slide is very nice and smooth, and even when you tap it, yeah, it looks goofy, but she still kind of reaches down. It's like she loses her balance. With the male characters, I still have the dodge roll as a placeholder animation, and that just does not look good. So I need to fix her so she doesn't have that flip animation before I forget. Okay, yeah. She's back. Alright, we can get rid of her. And we can go back to working on his jump animation next. Okay, so the thing about the wall jump is you want to be able to see the motion from the wall. And right now, I just had this placeholder, which does not follow any of that. The other thing that's kind of tricky is the way that the wall slide is set up. So when you're wall sliding and you're facing, let's say you're facing right, the wall slide that is played will be you up against the right or you up against the left. And so once you wall jump and you push off and switch directions, the jump animation basically starts from this side right here. So I gotta get that to look right, that he has a pose that is believable, that he's pushing off the wall. So that's always a tricky stuff to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye to all of this. Yeah, I'm going to get into all this. Just keep this base down. Okay, so we want the initial kickoff pose, and the thing for me anyway, with how I do my animation and how I have been putting it into the game. If people have, better ideas, I'm open to it. But getting the kickoff right is definitely tricky for me because the pose needs to have the feeling that he's pushing off of the wall and not just jumping out of midair, but it also needs to be quick enough. Just that one static pose needs to last for such a short period of time so that the motion and the movement is fluid and doesn't look out of place with the rest of what's happening. Base of push off the wall kind of pose, or the basic I was on the wall pose. I could probably just copy over, but just trying to get a basic. Okay, so this is kind of a good spot, I think. Obviously going to clean it up, but because this animation is going to play as soon as the jump button is hit, and because the transition is going to be so quick, the likelihood of you really catching this pose is very slim, but subconsciously you'll see it, and it has enough weight to it, it has enough recognition that he's up against something, so that way once the actual jump motion is transitioned through this, it won't seem out of place, or at least that's the hope. So Alright, so next pose. Another thing that I do when doing my animating is I tend to kind of break up the key poses. Not necessarily in a uniform, like frame set. Oh shoot, what's happening there? The leg's jerking. Oh shoot. Of course that's happening. Let's get rid of all these. Yeah, that's another thing. My rig has this base bone that the feet are connected to. Everything should be connected to it, but I always, I'll tweak that later. Anyway, I always hide it because when I move it, it of course moves the feet, and things happen, so I forgot to delete those keyframes. Okay, anyway, as I was saying, I kind of go in even intervals and then kind of tweak the timing later with those keyframes, and kind of fiddle with what the in-between is. So right now, rather than figuring out what's the push-off frame, because this is the up against the wall frame, I'm going to try to go straight into the already launched myself, or character launched himself frame, and then kind of scrub through the interpolation, mark a keyframe, and then kind of adjust and tweak that. And that's kind of my workflow with animation. I do very big, broad, not with everything, but with certain actions I do very big, broad, from one keyframe jump to the other very drastically, from one pose to the other, and then kind of insert into the middle what I think should be there, whether I use interpolation or not. There was a time when I wasn't using any at all to make my animations look more rigid in 2D, and that was definitely fun, but also challenging, getting all of the in-between frames to be consistent. Alright, so usually I like to have whatever leg is, this one is down pretty far, so most of the pushing power will be from that. So we kind of switch the positions of the legs, and get a nice, not too much of an arch, but definitely want some kind of swing in it. So the arms will be back, elbows forward. And once again, like I said, this is kind of like the end pose. So we actually kind of want more of a, let's see if we can get it. So arms about here. I know the shoulders are freaked up right now. Hold on. Yeah, so kind of get those in tight. Once again, I want to make sure it looks decent from both sides. Okay, so we'll keyframe there, and you can see that transition is horrible. I mean, literally, he's just kind of, yeah, it's just horrible. So the next actual pose that we're going to do is going to be the initial launch. So the initial launch is going to be Actually, let's see. If we push off with the left, then we kind of want the left to return back here. Maybe get kind of ready for falling in a way or something like that. Let's see how that looks. See, I feel like I want the yeah, we want that. Definitely want that thrown back kind of look. That's much better. Okay, so to push off with the left foot, so right in about there. We're gonna get that left foot back down. Get the right foot. Or actually, sorry, yeah, get the right foot kind of in that switch position. And we want that lunge. We want a good, powerful lunge. Arms back, head up. Very nice striking pose. And the arms for this one are definitely going to be one of the keys to getting it. See, that's one thing that can happen, which is not fun, is when your pole targets decide to be dumb. So, okay, that pose is definitely not that great, but we can push. See, something like that is what drives me crazy. You get that flip in the arms. Yeah, that's not good. Okay, so we want to keep all of this, everything up to the spine and the head. So we'll copy that. Get rid of this. Duplicate that. Paste that in. So, paste that in. Boom. Okay, and as you can see, even still, that transition is really bad. So, we want, the leg itself isn't that bad, but the hands. So right in about there, we want to get that down in there so it's nice coming from the bottom and sweeping the arms up kind of feel. So let's see. Right in there. has that, you know, we want this to be the motion of the arms instead of just forward or straight up. We'll get rid of this one. See how that works like that.
Wherever your great idea.
So, it's always the tricky thing for me is this animation. When I did it for my female character, it was also a very tricky thing to get. Because you want that to be a nice... That's a little too quick. Up against the wall.
Let's go back and kind of view what we did with her. Okay, so it's her wall slide and her wall jump. Okay, yeah, already that's a much better pose in my head. So spring forward and come back. Yeah. That's the motion we want. Okay, so we need him to be tucked in a little bit more at the start. And that will actually tighten things up. Let's get him. Unlike her, he doesn't have the, his hands are in a totally different location, so already that is looking better. Now getting that kind of, you know, because of his hand placement, getting that push that way. So I may need to actually switch his body position, actually do like with her, and get that all kind of Spider-Man. Yeah. I'm gonna fix her pose up too once I'm done with him, but yeah, I definitely need to do that. Yeah, so let's get all of this fixed. So straighten back up his spine, forward that arm, making sure our reference is not close. Okay. The other thing is, once again, you look at something from one angle and it looks really bad. But then, looking at it in this little profile is really what matters. You don't need to be so... I find anyway, when you're dealing with a fixed perspective, your animation is there's a lot more freedom to be creative on how to get a good silhouette. When you have full view of a character from any possible angle, a bad position of something will just ruin all of it. And it still reigns true but when you have that fixed perspective, you have a little bit more leeway. Because right now, this just doesn't look that great. You can see how his spine is twisted. But when you look at it from both profiles, it looks pretty good, actually. Straighten out his head a little bit more now. And that's the other thing too, kind of having that facing the camera look is very nice too, because certain things can face that side. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so and even that, I mean, already that looks so much more like an actual thing a human would do. Okay, so next is getting that in between and knowing how many frames you want that in between to be. So I think that is a good speed. So that is where we want the next in between. And all that in between is going to do. And I know that there is a way to kind of direct this kind of stuff using the curves. I'm not good at that. The curves confuse me and are sometimes the bane of my existence. So I usually, once again, like I said, would just use flat interpolation. Just straight up hard constraint. So I'd have a lot more keyframes or just frames in general because I'm basically doing everything step by step. But let's fix these hips a little bit. But it made things solely on the pose. All interpolation was done by hand through me. So okay, so then this can actually be lengthened a little bit more. So you got that. Yeah, look at that. That is actually pretty nice. Okay, so then this will actually, that's the next thing, is the timing of that transition to that pose, which that pose will then lead into the similar pose to what she has, which is kind of this kind of angled falling, and that's so that way when you hit into the wall and if you transition back into your wall slide, that just looks better than if she's completely parallel to the wall and moving forward, because obviously you're pushing forward and then you're trying to catch yourself, so you get that swing. So we don't want him to just stay in this kind of pose. At one point, we want his legs to stretch out. We want him to kind of get ready for either hitting the ground or hitting the wall. But we will save that. So yeah, we'll go back in the Blender. And yeah, so we want his to not just be a static right at that point. We're going to want that transition. But for now, we'll save that. Go back into Unity. And see how it looks in game. Hopefully it looks much better. Alrighty. So, see how the wall slide looks? Oh, much better. And then the jump. Oh yes. Look at that.
And even the transition to him falling, that doesn't look that bad. Try it on the other side so it's more fall time. And then it spreads out. We may make that transition happen a little bit later, but obviously I want to change the falling actual pose because he's just too splayed out, but that does not look bad. Even though I feel like that needs to happen a little later. Okay, so another thing that I enjoy doing with that. Okay, so like this pose right here, this transition, this kind of pushes up and then he goes straight into, oh, I did not show, okay, yeah. So this right here, right about here, that's the problem area. Because right now, he just kind of goes straight into this, as if this is the most drastic point of the action, when this should actually be the most drastic point. So one way to kind of convey that is to, like right about here, insert that keyframe, drag both of these out a little. So then this pops and then he gradually eases into the final pose and then slides out. So when you play it, yeah, you get that nice hut. There's that little bit of pause and you can just kind of adjust that a little bit. So we want that. And in fact, this can go back a bit. Oh yeah, that's much better. So even that, yeah, that looks much better. That is. So boom. And then we can have this be a quicker transition. So boom. Yeah, so that's another thing that I like doing. Because even with this, you know, the transition from this to the knees tucked, you just find out which you think is actually the real, you know, the closest to feeling really nice and dynamic. So like right about here feels good, you know, right halfway point. And then you just take that and put it closer and stretch this out a bit. So then it's like you quick into it, ease in, quick into it, ease in. And it's not the greatest, but you really get the sense of this right here being an important part of the jump arc. And now that we have this as the establishing push off pose, we can tweak this one a bit and maybe get the arms a little bit more back. So kind of backing up a little bit more, kind of adjust this knee a little bit, kind of in anticipation of the change. So there we go, that looks much better. Yes, that's a much better. Okay. So we get back into Unity, let that load it. And we will get right into the game and see how that looks. Obviously, too, we can adjust timing once we're in there, but yeah, that is much better. It definitely feels better too. Obviously, you guys just have the visual, but even just playing it, it feels so much better. Of course, we want that final frame not to just be the curled up, but we want there to be like right about. I mean, it's gonna be blurry, but right about here in the jump. So let's pause right there. Yeah, right about here. We want that. So we're gonna get right. Yeah, so instead of this, we want we don't want it to be that little of a transition. So we're gonna want to actually put another keyframe in there, and that keyframe will kind of be the so right in there. We don't want him to go from this tucked pose and have it transition into just kind of a vertical, a parallel to the ground, or perpendicular to the ground or parallel to the wall. We want it there to be that kind of nice diagonal because of how his motion is launching. So at the end of this, we're gonna want some kind of twist. I usually twist towards the side that kicked off. So what? Or the opposite of it, rather. So, well, actually, no, maybe we might want to go that way. No, yeah, so he pushed off with his left foot, and then we're going to kind of curl right. And that curl right will then have everything kind of stretch out. And the thing is, you can have the stretch be just with one side and really emphasize that tuck of the other knee. Because then that and really get that motion of the arms kind of ready for that falling kind of pose, and really get that nice look of power and motion behind the initial jump. So let's add that and see how that looks. Okay, so the other thing is, since we don't want this... Oh my gosh, I forgot to switch over to Blender again. Okay. That was horrible. Let's start over with that. Okay, so we don't want to finish on this. We don't want our transition into the falling animation to be stuck on this curled up pose. So we added this one. And this is a much, much better pose to look at. It's got a nice stretch to it. It really emphasizes where the motion came from. We started here and we sprung forward with an arch kind of to the back. And then as we settle in, we kind of come down like this. So you get that nice, the motion is kind of like that. You know, you got that kind of, obviously the actual jump motion is this, but the pose kind of goes from kind of that push off and arch back to settle back down in. And I think that just looks better altogether. And of course, you know, things like his head, whereas before he might have been looking up. Yeah, that's another thing that really sells it, is everything up until that point is basically the anticipation of where am I going, which is higher than I was. And once you reach this, that's like the point when he's at the peak of the jump, and then everything else is down. So you want that head to be looking down and getting ready, anticipating. And so since this pose is now more of a transition and not really the key pose, we can actually get that much quicker and have it really sell as just a transition. Yeah, that's so much better. Alright, so head back into Unity. Get that in there and see how it looks in game again. Okay, so Oh yeah, that is much better. Oh, that is much better. So yeah, so as you can see on that, yeah, so right about there, we'll pause right there. No, we'll come down this way. So yeah. Now that we're paused, we can kind of go frame by frame, and you can see how that looks much better. I still need to tweak the transition, you know, the amount that it'll tween in between, but already you can see that motion, and you can see that turn starting to happen. It's taking quite a bit, but yeah, you can really see that. How he still has that angle, that curve to his spine, and just that loop, that kind of ping pong effect, or sine wave, not sine wave, but just that in and out of the pose. This is a good time to then check. So we have the wall jump, which transitions into the fall. So let's see. We want to go for the male. Where is it? Right here. Okay. So this transition right here. We're going from this. Oh, where is that? Okay. Well, that's the wall slide. Okay. There's the wall jump. So yeah, we're going from this. Going from this into this. And this pose, once again, is going to get fixed. But you can see how it comes in a little too abruptly. So we want to actually have the exit time be a little bit longer, so we really get that sense of, yeah, let's have the exit time be a little bit more. Because we want that. That's the money pose. That's like that's how he comes in, you know. That's what you're landing as. So. And then he eases into gravity and just that back and forth, then goes back down. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so let's see how that looks right in the game. Oh yes, that's much better. And now, as you can see, there are issues with the pose. Obviously, his legs look a little cramped, so we'll stretch him out a little bit more. But it's definitely a much better feeling. And even with this, once again, that wall jump, you can't see the startup frame because it happens so quick. But I guarantee that without that first little frame that just kind of initiates the jump. Oh, let's see if I can get it in pause. Yeah. Anyway, you know, the frame I'm talking about, just that up against the wall. You know, this right here, without this frame right there, it just does not look the same. It's a whole nother animal without it. Okay, so yeah, much better. This pose will fix that up and get that stretch a little bit better. So yeah, we want to have that pose be a little bit more stretched. Even this one, this foot, you can kind of not stretch it out more, but just kind of in the opposite sense, get that nice and, yeah. Of course, one thing that I think never really looks good is when you're doing something that, you know, has very specific camera angles. Once again, that fixed camera angle that I talked about. Having having a whole part of a limb obstructed, so as you can see, you can't see anything below the knee. That just does not look good. It kind of makes everything look flat, but not in the way that we want. So I always want to add, yeah, like a little bit of, just a little bit of that, so you know that that limb is still there. Like something like that. Yeah, that's much better. Now, one thing that we did not do that we can is kind of start to bring those hands down. And what that does is it makes the motion of the arms, which start here and they go up, and then they kind of come back around, and kind of the reset of the jump, just up and then back down again. So if we start kind of getting those ready, so then when we're about here, the arms are about there. Check both sides, make sure it looks okay. Fix the elbows. Okay, so we get that back and forth, and then that spread out is a little bit more dramatic. It's a little too quick though. Let's see. The other thing is just trying to figure out how you want to transition from things. So one thing that's possible is actually to kind of keep that locked in feel, because the fall animation itself, because once again this is still part of the wall jump animation, the fall animation itself kind of brings the arms up. So you can have a more tight pose so that he's a little bit more exact. I mean, right now he's just kind of striking yeah, but that way it's like up and then you're getting ready. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so let's get back into Unity. Let that load up. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Yeah, that is a much better pose. And then he transitioned in. That's nice. And what's nice about that too is the movement that I want in this game is very, I mean, I want it so that you're going from running to jumping to, you know, to wall jumping to sliding. And so the sliding transition into the wall jump, of course he doesn't have the slide, he just has this stupid roll. But when he eventually does get the slide, that pose right there, yeah, that pose right there will look very nice. Yeah, that will look very nice, because then as soon as he hits the ground, he's already kind of at that angle, and then he just kind of slides in. So yeah, that's going to look nice once that's all in. So I think for now, that's a good placeholder for the wall jump. And one of the reasons why I say placeholder, there's a lot of polishing that I'm going to put into this. I mean, I want everything to look as good as possible. One of the problems is because I don't have the weapons rigged in yet. Because I'm still working on what their weapons are actually going to be, what designs are going to be for them, how they're going to function, all of that stuff. I have the basics of the combat system in, and the animations are crucial to making it feel and, of course, look great. So, one of the things that is kind of this stage is I can kind of get a basic understanding of what I want my poses in. And then once I add in the weapons and all the extra bones or whatever that come into play in giving them their weapons, this is just kind of the base. So I think the jump could benefit from a redo, but definitely the falling. I just feel like it's a little too, like, I don't know. It feels a little too exaggerated. I might do that next time. I want to see what else kind of may not be the best. I guess let's hop back into oh, I know one thing. It's the ledge grab. Okay, so the ledge grab animation is probably the one that I have the toughest time with because of this motion, but gosh, this thing looks horrible. I mean, his spine is all twisted, and even in profile, I mean, it just does not look right. He has the kind of Kylo Ren thing going on there, where he just looks way too wide up top for no reason. So, I think we'll tackle this next time. Let's see, how long have I been streaming for? Yeah, so we've been streaming for about an hour and a half. So yeah, I think I'll come back to this. We'll save everything now. And yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back to this in the next stream, and that will be the focus of the next stream. Is just finishing some more polish. I hope to start streaming sooner. Today was a little, had some things going on, so I had to stream later than I wanted. But yeah, I think we'll start with that tomorrow. And once we get that established, yeah, once we tackle that, we'll have a much better sense of where we want to move in terms of the combat animations and things like that. So, yeah, I think we have a decent understanding of where we want the animations to go. And just kind of a goal for next week. So next week we'll be getting all of the jumping and falling animations finished. So that way, while we can kind of, what am I trying to say? We get the falling and jumping animations done, so that way the wall jump feels better. Because right now it still doesn't feel as good as the female character, because obviously her animations are more polished. So yeah, I think we're gonna leave it there. Had a fun time. I don't know if anyone showed up during the live broadcast of this, but to anyone who was here live, thank you very much. To anyone who's watching this later, either on Twitch archive or watching it on my YouTube channel where I'm going to post this, thank you very, very much. It means a lot to me that you took the time and that you found this interesting. So, thank you, and have a good night.